Right. Got it. No problem. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, of course, you know that's a very polite way of saying it's great that everyone is back. We have a great guest speaker this afternoon, but before we get to that mayor, we have another mayor that we want to honor and make a very quick presentation. Mayor Ron Littlefield will unfortunately be leaving office in April after 2 terms as mayor. He served his community for decades as both mayor and as a local leader in community and urban planning. Mayor Littlefield has lent his experience to our conference as a member of our advisory board and as a strong voice within the Mayor's Water Council. He made great progress working with the EPA on clean water mandates. Now, Ron, you will certainly be missed. Of course, you are always welcome here at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I'm going to ask all of us that we thank Ron for his many years of service to the United States Conference of Mayors. Mayor Ron Littlefield.
Well, I am absolutely stunned. My staff told me to be here at this lunch, and I said, why? And they wouldn't tell me. Consequently, I'm sure you'll all be sad to hear I am speechless. But never say die. I just want to say that as a city professional, and some of you I have known in my previous lives as a city planner and others, we have been inspired by your cities and by your mayors. Mayor Joe Riley, the icon, has been to Chattanooga many times. We've stolen ideas from him, and we've stolen ideas from many of you in your cities. Working with this staff of the Conference of Mayors has been a capstone in my career that I would have never dreamed possible, and I want to compliment Tom Cochran and the staff who work together and work for all of these hundreds of mayors so seamlessly and so well. Thank you for what you do. And to you other mayors, I was standing, I guess it was sort of a premonition of this, I was standing up on that rail yesterday looking down on the gathering, people coming and going, and thinking about the mayors that I have known in the past who are not here now, and seeing the young mayors coming in, new mayors. I'm excited about what the future holds for the cities with the kind of talent that we see coming on board, including my city. A man 21 years younger than me will very likely be taking the helm, and I'll be encouraging him to get involved with this organization as quickly as possible. But thank you for being a part of my extended family for this 8-year time that I have been privileged to work with you. I won't be saying goodbye because many of you I will see as we all move forward, but thank you for what you do. Thank you for the quest that you're on, and may God bless you. Thank you.
We, of course, have a plaque for Ron Littlefield, Mayor of Chattanooga, given in appreciation of your distinguished service to America's cities and the United States Conference of Mayors. Again, of course, it has Tom's name, my name, but the most important name is Ron Littlefield. Congratulations.
Well, the old fat squeeze. Don't go off the. Okay, thank you.
Give it up one more time for Ron. As I did yesterday, let me also recognize on the dais, he has joined us here today, my immediate predecessor as president of this great conference, and that, of course, is none other than the great mayor of Los Angeles, our most recent past president, Antonio Villaraigosa. I'm pleased now to introduce to some and, as they say, present to others New York City's great mayor, Mike Bloomberg. Having taken office in the months following the deadly attacks of September 11th, 2001, Mayor Bloomberg has steered his city to success beyond all imagination from those dark days. As mayor, he is, of course, focused on improving public health and safety, as well as reforming public education. Mayor Bloomberg has taken charge of New York's economic future, demonstrating that no degree of terrorism, financial collapse, or natural disaster can deter the growth of our nation's largest metro economy. Any mayor who has dealt with a deadly storm knows the challenges that Mayor Bloomberg and others faced just a few months ago regarding Superstorm Sandy. But Mayor Bloomberg was again the face of New York City's resilient population, working day and night to manage the recovery. And this Conference of Mayors has been proud to stand with New York City and all the cities in the region that have been so impacted by this storm. And yesterday, Mayor Bloomberg made a commitment by the conference to all of New York State and New Jersey and Connecticut and many, many others who have been faced with the deadly effects of Superstorm Sandy, and we stand with all of our mayors who have been affected. This has hardly been the extent, though, of Mayor Bloomberg's leadership this past fall. As a year of horrific shootings came to a close with the tragic massacre at Sandy Hook, Mayor Bloomberg was among the first national figures to call on President Obama and the Congress to embrace tougher gun laws. The co-founder, of course, of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, proud partner of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Mayor Bloomberg has consistently advocated for making America's streets safer by taking illegal guns off of the streets and reducing access to assault weapons that made headlines far too often in the past. Of course, we mayors grapple with gun violence every day, and we know that Mayor Bloomberg is on the right side of this issue and the right side of history. We appreciate his courage and certainly welcome him here today. On a note of personal privilege, let me thank him many, many times privately. When I ran for mayor and got through the Democratic primary in May of 2007, our general election, of course, is in November, I called Mayor Bloomberg to see if I could meet with him. You know, of course, that there is no mayor's school. There are certainly things that you can learn along the way, but there's really nowhere to go and get that kind of knowledge and information. Now, the thing about it is that I had never met him, and he certainly had no reason to know who I was, but took the call and invited me up, and we met at a deli in New York City. Now, when you meet with the mayor at a deli in New York City, they, of course, close the street. I don't know how he convinced the proprietor because he had no business for half the day. And we sat and talked. And then he, of course, very generously offered his staff and various staff members throughout the course of that day. I tell you that because, one, I want to thank the mayor publicly for doing that. He is so generous with his time, with his resources, with his own folks, and put together a whole package of a day to learn about some of the things going on in New York City. He is the mayor of the largest city in the United States of America, but he is a great person, a great friend to this conference and to all mayors across the United States and around the world. Please welcome our friend, Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Please. Michael, thanks for those kind words. I'm sure you need something or other. Nobody does that for nothing. You know, I just got to tell you the story about Nutter. He has done a spectacular job in Philadelphia in everything except one thing, the 76ers. As a matter of fact, I take the subway to work most days. Been doing it for a long time. And the only time anybody has ever yelled at me, I'm getting off the subway train and I turn, this guy, big hulking guy, and he glares at me before the doors close and he screams, "Fix the Knicks." Well, this year the Knicks are having a good season. I must have done something right. Of course, it did take 10 years. Anyways, it is great to be here with all of you. Whether you are the mayor of a little town or a big city, there are a lot of responsibilities that we all share in common. We have to balance the budget, we have to find new ways to create jobs, and we have to deliver quality, efficient services. But perhaps the number one responsibility that we all have is protecting the lives of our citizens. The public holds us accountable in keeping neighborhoods safe, and we know that the biggest and most serious threat to our neighborhoods in this day and age is a criminal, a mentally ill person, a person with substance abuse problems, and any of those, particularly if they have a gun in their hand. Criminals and mentally ill are prohibited, as you know, by federal law from owning guns, but as you know, the enforcement of that law is a tragic joke, and all of us have to deal with the results of that. Criminals can buy guns as easily as logging onto the internet or just by stopping at a gun show, and there's no background check. As mayors, we see people breaking the law and we say, how do we stop them? Unfortunately, you are here in a city where that's not what people do. Here in Washington, for far too long, elected officials have been watching people break the law and have said absolutely nothing. Or they've said, I support the Second Amendment. Well, that's nice. So do most of us. Our bipartisan coalition, Mayors Against Guns, now has more than 800 members, including many people in this room. And I think we all support the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment does give you the right to bear arms. Having said that, the Supreme Court has ruled that there are legitimate controls and regulations that are consistent with the Second Amendment, and that we should use those to protect the public. Boston Mayor Tom Menino, who co-founded this coalition, deserves enormous credit for its growth and success, and so do mayors like Mayor Nutter and Mayor Villarosa and Mayor Ryback and a whole bunch of you. But the real strength of our coalition and the real force that we have to protect our citizens is right here in this room. The mayors of small cities and medium-sized cities and big cities, the mayors of cities from the east and the west and the north and the south, Republican mayors, independent mayors, Democratic mayors, mayors from urban and suburban and rural areas. Now, over the past month, we've had more than 100 new mayors join from around the country, including the mayors from Tucson, Arizona, Mayor Jonathan Rothschild, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Mayor Stephen Scafidi, and Blacksburg, Virginia, Mayor Ron Rodarn. And we'd be happy to have lots of others join. The more of us that we have together, the better we'll be able to make the case to Congress why sensible gun laws have to be on the books and have to be enforced. We just cannot continue to have 33 people a day killed in the United States with guns, and over 40 people commit suicide with guns every single day. But keeping guns away from criminals and other dangerous people has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, and it's not something that we can do very effectively at the local level. This is not a constitutional question, but it is a political courage issue, and it is an issue for Washington. We can't do it alone. This week, President Obama and Vice President Biden did step up and put forward a comprehensive plan for attacking gun violence, and I give them both a lot of credit for listening to the voices of everyday Americans and putting public safety ahead of special interests. The public in this country has changed their views. When you see Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe, a big gun advocate, all of a sudden come out and say, you know, enough is enough, that tells you something. If you go and you talk to your constituents, you will find that even the most hardened of them have now started to say, well, wait a second, maybe we have gone a little bit too far. Maybe there is a ways to protect the Second Amendment rights, but also to keep guns out of the hands of minors, out of the hands of criminals, out of the hands of substance abuse users, people who have mental problems. There's a whole bunch of people that should not have guns. I think we all understand that. And I think the public is ready for a change. Our coalition has been in close touch with the Vice President in developing the plan, and we were encouraged to see it include virtually every one of the major elements that we sought. But as the President himself has said, the most important parts of his plan require action from Congress. And that's what I wanted to talk to you for a few minutes about. The trouble is, Congress is more removed from this issue than mayors are. Congress people don't get called in the middle of the night when a police officer has been shot. Mayors do. Congress people and senators don't have to go and explain to a mother or a father or a sister or a brother, a spouse or a child why their loved one is not going to come home and how the person that shot them got the gun and why we didn't, as a society, do something to protect them and to keep that from happening. We understand what it's like, and they don't. And so it's incumbent on us to explain to the people in Washington that when we have to go to the hospital and we have to look the police officer's parents or spouse in the eye and explain that their worst nightmare has come true, that their loved one won't be coming home, it's up to the Congress people to do something about it. When someone says the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, I ask them, what about our police officers? They're good guys, they have guns, and all too often across this country, they get shot, and all too often they do not survive. Those of us in elected office have a responsibility, I think, to protect those whom we ask to protect the public. And it's up to us to convince the members of Congress that our officers deserve laws that keep guns away from criminals. Now, we also need members of Congress to understand that when criminals have easy access to guns, not only do our police officers get shot and killed, not only do innocent children die, our economy suffers. Perhaps the single most important economic development tool that exists is public safety. And everywhere you look in America, when violent crime has been cut, jobs have been added. It is no coincidence, I don't think, that in New York City, which is the safest big city in the country, and has also been leading the nation in job growth, it's because of low crime. People come to New York when they find out that it is safe. They come as tourists, they come to start businesses, they come to work, they come to get an education, they come to use our hospitals. It all starts with low crime, and the correlation between low crime and fewer guns is almost 100%. Now, I don't think that New York has the answers to everything, and there's a lot of things that apply in New York that won't apply in other cities. But if you can keep the guns out of the hands of people that current federal law says they shouldn't have them, you will have an awful lot safer society. Life expectancy in New York City is 3 years greater than the average in America. And one of the big reasons when you look at the data is an awful lot fewer murders and a lot fewer suicides. The fact is, reducing the number of murders to record lows is a big reason why we've been able to increase the number of jobs to record highs. More people are working in New York City today than have ever worked in our city before. The country has gotten back about 40% of the jobs from the low back in 2008. New York City's gotten back 200% of the jobs from the low in '08. If you want to encourage economic growth in your city, one of the ways to do it is to lower the crime rate, and you can do that if we can get Congress to make sure that we have some sensible laws that are enforced to keep guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't hear it. Now, what you'll hear from many skeptics and from the gun lobby is changing laws won't make a difference. Whatever the law is, they'll say criminals and the mentally ill will find a ways around it. It's true that no law can stop crime every time, but it is also true, and the data supports this, that smart gun laws really do make a difference. The data shows that requiring background checks for all gun sales, as the President has proposed, that states that require it are half as likely to sell guns than they are that are used in crimes in other states. For instance, Colorado closed its gun show loophole. Far fewer guns were then sold in Colorado that turned up at crime scenes in other states. The fact is, background checks work. They keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people, and they make it harder for criminals to engage in gun trafficking. Now, they don't work every time. Sometimes the data is flawed. Sometimes people find ways to break the law and go around the requirement for a background check. But most times they do work. And we all live in a world where we have to make sure that things work most of the times. And when people say, well, if it's not going to work all the time, we shouldn't do it, that's just ridiculous. We have to protect the lives of the people who have elected us. The data also shows that in states that require background checks for every gun sale, fewer women, 38% fewer, are shot to death by their boyfriends or husbands. And in those same states that require background checks for every gun sale, the suicide rate is nearly half as high as it is in states that do not require background checks. Now, the gun lobby so callously says, someone who wants to kill himself or herself will always find a way to do it. But I don't believe that. It's every parent's nightmare that a child will commit suicide. Children, it's tough to grow up. We all know that. And we've got to do something to make it just harder so that when a child really is starting to lose it, they don't have an opportunity to do something that you can't reverse so easily. The more difficult we make it for them, the better off we will all be. The data shows that common sense gun laws make suicide far less likely. And we'll have in the next year 12,000 murders with guns in this country. We'll have about 16,000 suicides with guns in this country. So we've got to do something about this. Background checks for all gun sales will dramatically reduce the illegal trafficking that leads to murder. It will dramatically reduce domestic violence, dramatically reduce suicides. It is a law that works, and we've got to tell our members of Congress that it is time to make it the law of the land. We all know, based on the data, that some of the other measures the President proposed also works. For example, after the Virginia Tech massacre, Virginia became a national leader in adding mental health records to the background check system. And as a recently released research report from Duke University showed, mental health records of a severely mentally ill person, once it's added to the background system, he or she has a 31% is 31% less likely to be convicted of a future violent crime. So tell your members of Congress, you know that adding mental health records to the database works, and we need their leadership to compel states to follow Virginia's lead and do so. We will all benefit from that. Now, there are many people who believe that the 1994 ban on assault weapons was ineffective, and there's no question that it contained too many loopholes. But let me tell you what we do know about the 1994 ban on the manufacture of magazines that sold magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. It has made a big difference. A study of crime in Virginia shows that between 1998 and 2004, when the prohibition was in effect, guns with high-capacity magazines were 60% less likely to be recovered at crime scenes. And after the ban expired between 2005 and 2010, the percentage of guns with high-capacity magazines that were used in crimes nearly doubled. So the law limiting high-capacity magazines worked, and we need to convince members of Congress to make it the law of the land once again. Now, in the days and weeks ahead, our bipartisan coalition of mayors against illegal guns will be coordinating a major congressional outreach campaign. And I would urge, I plead with you to get involved. When you talk to members of Congress, you'll hear from some of them that the gun lobby will hurt them if they support any common sense steps to make your citizens' safer, to extend the lives of your citizens. But as more and more people realize, the gun lobby's ability to influence elections is vastly overblown. And I think we saw that last November in both the presidential race and a number of congressional races. The NRA said their number one priority for 2012 was to defeat Barack Obama. Any of you that want to stay for Monday here in Washington, I think you'll find that they weren't terribly successful at doing that. And the reason really is simple. When you do the polling, 80% of all gun owners and NRA members support common sense steps like requiring background checks for all gun sales. We need you and your constituents to tell members of Congress that we all want to live. We don't want our cops shot. We don't want our kids shot. We don't want to get shot. We need to tell our members of Congress that they've got to stand up for sensible gun laws. And if they do that, we will stand up for them. And if we don't, we will stand up for whoever runs against them. Because that's exactly what the NRA is trying to do. The NRA says, you don't support us, we're going to make you lose your job. We're going to support your opponent. Well, we can do exactly the same thing. And I've said I'll support members of Congress. Thank you. I've said I will support members of Congress on both sides of the aisle who support these common sense proposals, and I will remember those who do not, and we need to hear that from everyone here. It's a sensible policy. This is something that we are the only industrialized country in the world that has this problem. We have more guns than people in the United States. I know the Second Amendment gets you the right to carry a gun, but most people I know don't even have a gun. So there's got to be some people with an awful lot of guns. Think about people that advertise bullet or armor-piercing bullets. Now, when's the last time you saw a deer or an elk with a bulletproof vest? Been a long time, I would think. The bottom line is, armor-piercing bullets are designed to kill cops. That's the only reason you would ever want to buy one. Think about that, and yet we're selling lots of them in this country. We need Congress to stop this craziness and explain to them that if they vote for the laws that we need, we will vote for them, and if we don't, we'll vote for somebody that will get us the laws that will keep the people that you and I have been elected to protect. We also need to explain to Congress the suffering we see when people in our communities are affected by gun violence. We have to remind them that every single day, 33 Americans are murdered with guns. If we don't take action over the course of the president's next term, 48,000 Americans, 48,000 will be murdered with guns in this country. That is almost as many people that have been killed in combat during the entire Vietnam War. Unfortunately, their names will not be inscribed on a memorial on the Washington Mall. There will be no national holiday remembering them. And on Monday, when we mark what is probably the closest thing we have to a national holiday for gun murder victims, Martin Luther King Day, we've got to remember that he was killed too. The murders of Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy in the spring of 1968 broke the hearts of this country, and it did spur Washington to act. However, since 1968 to now, there have been more than 400,000 Americans killed with guns. That's more Americans than were killed in all of World War II. And last month, in ways that we have not seen since 1968, I think the murder of 20 school children and 6 faculty members broke the hearts and changed the psyche of the people in this country. And now it's up to us. It's up to us to make sure that Washington acts. In the days ahead, if you haven't yet joined our coalition, please do. If you are a member, we'll be in contact with you, providing all the support we can. But we need every mayor to go to their congressmen and their congresswomen and their senators and say, we've got a problem in our city, and you're the one that is responsible if that problem continues. Now, we know change in Washington is difficult. Change in Washington is difficult on any issue, and especially on guns. But we also know as elected officials, government really is responsive. The Congresspeople and the senators will do what they think their constituents want. We've just got to make sure, as the real day in and day out representatives of their constituents, we're the ones that are on the streets, we're the ones that see them every day, we're the ones that are responsible for their safety and their kids' education and traffic and jobs at a local level. They've got to understand from us that this is what our constituents want. And we want to make sure that our police officers get home safely every single night. And if we can convince members of Congress to walk a mile in our shoes and see that this is a crime problem, not a constitutional problem, we can find common ground, we can make our country a stronger and safer place. So thank you for what you do for this country. Here's a chance to really make a difference on a national level. Together, we have an enormous amount of ability to change the future of this country. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Bloomberg, thank you again very, very much. The Conference of Mayors is very pleased to be partnering with Weight Watchers International right here at lunchtime, and to bring you a panel discussion on supporting healthy lifestyles with community-based solutions. We, have, as mayors, of course, juggle many pressing issues in our cities, but nothing is more impactful and deserving of attention than the health and well-being of our citizens. During this next moderated discussion, we will learn how cities are supporting behavior change through innovation and community-based approaches. I almost always find that the best way for many of us, certainly speaking for myself, to learn is from each other. And so joining us to introduce our moderator and the panel is the CEO of Weight Watchers International, David Kerkhoff. David?
So this just might be me, but am I the only person who thinks that the dessert looks like a happy face? And it's mocking me. Thank you for joining, and it's an honor to be here. There is absolutely no doubt that obesity has become one of the most pervasive health issues now facing our nation. The very simple example I use is diabetes. There are 26 million Americans who now have type 2 diabetes. It has turned into a $200 billion a year condition. That 26 million people, give or take about 10 to 11% of the adult American population, that's about double from 1970. Perhaps more disturbing is the fact that there's another 78 million Americans who are now classified or considered to be pre-diabetic, which means they have an A1C measurement between 5.5 and 6.5, which means unless something changes, they will in fact become diabetic, which is why the CDC now has a forecast that by the year 2050, 1 out of every 3 walking Americans will be diabetic. It by itself is the thing that literally has the possibility of crushing the life out of our healthcare system. We can't afford it. Obesity has also become, sadly, has now passed cigarette smoking as the leading cause, preventable cause of cancer. And it has a host of other conditions associated with it. It's worth taking a second to consider where this came from, which is not people being undisciplined, and it's not people not caring about how they look or how they feel. It is about the fact that we have about 600 more calories available per person today than was the case in 1970. Now, those aren't all being consumed, although we're doing our best at lunch. But nonetheless, the food environment, and I'm not blaming anyone, but it's the world that we live in has changed overnight. Every part of our bodies and brains were perfectly constructed to encourage us to eat based on thousands of years of evolution of living in a world of food scarcity, yet today we live in a world of food overabundance. If you consider the fact that obesity is an everywhere problem, it is most pervasive in low-income areas, where the issue is often not a lack of calories, but the quality of calories as you move down the income strata get worse and worse and worse. So as the United States and within our communities, we see obesity hitting us in lots of places, but in particular, it's going to be the low-income communities that are going to be the most vexing. Now, here's the good news. I can't think of, and I'm very proud of what I do at Weight Watchers, and I'm very proud that we're helping people find a healthier lifestyle and providing the behavioral counseling and everything else that we do, but I cannot think of, and I may get into trouble with the Governors Association, but I cannot think of a group of people that can have a bigger impact directly on the obesity epidemic than the people sitting in this room. You are the CEOs of your cities, and you're entrusted with the health of your employees, but you also provide leadership on the ground in your communities, and you have the ability, better than anyone else, to create the types of programs that can have a meaningful, measurable impact in turning this epidemic around. It is absolutely possible. I'm incredibly grateful, given the apparent durability of Mayor Bloomberg's memory, that I had enough good sense to be supportive of the work that he's been doing, including not just with nutrition labeling, which I think is a very big deal, but also in terms of the step that was taken with the so-called Big Gulp, the Big Gulp rule. There's a lot that you can do in your community in terms of making the healthy choice the easier choice. There's a lot that can be done in terms of providing access to nutritious foods for people in low-income areas. Again, you truly are in the best position to have impact. We stand ready to do whatever we can to be in partnership with all of you. But really, I think the destiny of the country and our ability to have the impact that we want to have on obesity lies in this room. So you're going to hear some excellent examples of some of that work up on the dais today. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Maggie Fox from NBC News.
Thank you, David. And I'd like to point out that David did not eat his dessert. I think that illustrates one of the ways we can keep ourselves healthy. As tempting as it was, he was able to pass on it. I also noticed that Mayor Bloomberg didn't talk about one of the more controversial topics that he's taken on, which is the Big Gulp issue and the giant sodas. He's pretty brave to take on both the gun lobby and the soda industry at the same time. And Americans love of doing whatever they want to do and not being told what to do. It's a brave move to step in and say, you know what, you need some help. But some of the mayors who are here with us today are going to talk about some things that they've done in succeeding in helping Americans become healthier without actually telling them what they should be doing. Ways that have worked to encourage people to be healthy, to do the right things, and to help change the environment, which, as David has pointed out, does everything it can do to encourage us to sit in our seats and eat. Just look at yourselves right now. It's a pretty good example of that. I'll introduce the mayors, not in any particular order, but just in the order in which they're sitting. Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake of Baltimore. She's got a lot of interesting initiatives she'd like to talk about. She's got a program for healthy babies, also a very interesting program for helping women stay at a healthy weight while they're pregnant, which is a very important issue. I can attest to that. Keeping the weight off during pregnancy and then afterwards is one of the biggest challenges facing any woman who has a baby. She's also got some interesting summer food service programs and after-school food programs that might be interesting for other mayors to hear about. next down, Mayor Mick Cornett of Oklahoma City has some interesting thoughts about how to convert a city that has been designed for cars, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that, into a city that's friendly for exercise. I'm also glad to say that he is one of my own. He's a former journalist, and as a former journalist, he's figured out how to do a lot of publicity without having to pay for it, i.e. make use of us, the media, for free advertising. We'll ask him a little bit about that. Next down is Mayor Terry Bellamy of Asheville, North Carolina, one of the most beautiful cities in the country. She's got some very interesting ideas about how to encourage children to walk to school, and I think some of Mayor Bloomberg's comments can actually flavor some of hers, because one of the issues is helping parents feel safe and letting their children walk to school. She's also evidently helping encourage her city to get people literally into the river, and I'd love to hear a bit more about how she's done that. And at the end is Mayor Greg Fisher of Louisville, Kentucky. He boasted to me that Louisville is the only city that's in the Zagat Guide. I have asked him if he will present us with some of his favorite recipes. I'm not sure how he's going to be able to do that. He's also got some interesting ideas about how he's weaned one of the states that's most associated with tobacco off tobacco and onto the idea of local, sustainable, healthy food. And finally, I'm really going to ask him how he's got the entire city doing a Zumba class in public. But to start off, I'd like to ask Mayor Rawlings Blake if she can talk a little bit about some of her favorite initiatives and some of the things that might be able to translate into other cities as well.
Thank you very much, and it's certainly my pleasure to be a part of this very important discussion. When I think about how we got to our health policy, it frustrated me as mayor and on the city council prior to being mayor that Baltimore is home to some of the finest health institutions, including Johns Hopkins, in the world. Yet we had a population that had higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of cardiovascular disease, higher rates of obesity than the national average, way above. It seemed inconsistent. And our health department, our health commissioner, needed a baseline so we could determine how we could be a healthier city, and we needed to have that baseline in order to make sure to measure our results. So we have an assessment of every community in the city. We found out some interesting things. At some communities, some zip codes, people live until their 80s, some in their 60s. Your life expectancy should not depend on your zip code. So we had to get smart about how we were going to tackle each of these challenges. So we have Healthy Baltimore 2015. It's a plan to get healthy. It's a neighborhood-by-neighborhood plan. We've taken those health assessments into the community, allowed people to determine what are your priorities, what do you want to tackle first? Is it diabetes? Is it cardiovascular disease? All of those things with the self-determination portion helps the communities really grab on to the initiative and make it their own. We also believe, as David was talking about, it's about having access. And we have Baltimarket, or our virtual supermarket, where we bring healthy food into communities. So you can use their libraries, public housing, schools, senior centers that are equipped with computers. And we have a local grocer that works with us. And if you use SNAP benefits, cash, or credit card, you can go into the library or whatever, order your food, and the food will be delivered to your neighborhood that next day. It's the only program in the country that allows individuals who use SNAP benefits to order food online, and that's because we have a great local partner. But it's about doing out-of-the-box things to be able to bring those fresh and healthy food, affordable fresh and healthy food into the community. And the last thing I want to talk about is looking for those barriers, as I know we're going to hear from the other mayors, looking for those barriers, the built environment that is restricting our ability to have healthy communities, whether it's walkability or safety, the things that exist in our communities that prevent people from getting out and getting active. That's part of the work that we're doing in assessing the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mayor Rawlings Blake. Mayor Cornett, I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of the initiatives that you've been successful with.
Is the mic on? Yes, it is. Okay. I will try to keep my comments brief. I can get wound up on this subject and literally speak for an hour, but I also know that the odds of any event ending on time is directly related to the number of mayors who get to speak. And this event is doomed. My journey really started back in the spring of 2007 when Men's Fitness magazine put the city of Oklahoma City on its list of the fattest cities in America. I was embarrassed by it and couldn't believe all the fat people in my city. And then I got on the scales and I realized I was one of them. I took care of my issue first. I lost 40 pounds over 40 weeks and came up with an idea to get a conversation started in the community because I really felt like we weren't talking about obesity and it was a huge problem for us. And so to gather attention, I went to the zoo and I stood in front of the elephants and I said, this city's going on a diet and we're going to lose 1 million pounds. And then all hell broke loose. I will save you the trek, but over the next 4 years, we had 47,000 people go to the website that we had designed, and we tracked their weight loss, and they lost the 1 million pounds in 4 years and 3 weeks. So that occurred. I know. That occurred in January of last year, so 1 year ago. And along the way, we used the campaign and the awareness that it had created to go to the ballot box and get our citizens to vote in several steps that I don't think they would have before. We're building new gymnasiums in all of our inner city grade schools. We're building new sidewalks, hundreds of miles of new sidewalks in the community. We're building over 100 miles of jogging and biking trails. We're building senior health and wellness centers throughout the community. We're building a downtown Central Park that's over 70 acres in size. And we're redesigning all of our inner city streets to be more pedestrian friendly. We had completely designed the city. It was a great city if you happened to be a car. But if you were a person, it worked against you in several different ways. And I think ultimately our Public Works Department felt like they had new instructions that their job was no longer to see how fast they could move cars around the city, but it was to how people could react and have a city that revolved around people. And we put a link to Weight Watchers on the website. 150,000 people in one day visited our website, and overall, as I mentioned, the 47,000 people signed up to lose the weight. Last spring, at the last poll, Men's Fitness released their annual rankings, and we were now on the list of the fittest cities in the country. And then the state health rankings came out, and Oklahoma has always had embarrassing health statistics for the usual parameters. We had been 49th in the nation, and you can see there's not very many directions to go from that point. Last year, we had moved up to 43rd. And so, you don't pat yourself on the back when you're 43rd, but we're heading in the right direction. And I think that's what people in Oklahoma City kind of like about this new priority in their lives. We're talking about wellness. We're creating infrastructure to make it a healthier place to live, and we're making ourselves more accountable. We had created a city where we had higher and higher standards for stuff, but we had never had higher and higher standards for us. And I think we've at least turned the direction around, and we're heading in another 10, 20-year path of becoming one of the healthier states in the country.
And Mayor Cornett will be handing out his diet plan at the end of the lunch. Next, Mayor Terry Bellamy of Asheville. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you've been able to put into place?
I'm excited about a lot of things that we've done in Asheville, and I'm really proud of the fact that I can actually say it wasn't just a city government initiative. None of these initiatives. It's all about galvanizing the community to get their buy-in so that they'll be sustainable over the duration. And one of the first projects that we put in place was Safe Routes to Schools. We would hear about people in a particular neighborhood that it's not really in our city, it's right next to our city, but we kept hearing about Emma community, our children want to walk in Emma community. And what we did was we looked to the state to say, you have a Safe Routes to School initiative, and we want to put one in Asheville. And what we did, we wanted to make sure we had a human school bus. We wanted our kids, those who couldn't ride the bus, to be able to walk to school safely. So we put in a sidewalk, and it made all the difference in the community, because in this low-income community, it provided access. At their school, they have opportunity to barter. They actually work in the garden, and the individuals who work in the garden get the food out of the garden. They can bring in old clothes to get new clothes. They can bring in things that they've made at home at this school, and so we want to make sure that they have access, and by putting in just one sidewalk in this community, it transformed the entire community. Not only did we do it in that community, we did it in another community, and where we're seeing individuals allowing their children to walk to school for the first time, and it's exciting because the kids line up 2 by 2 with their little flag, and they're the human school bus. Another thing that we wanted to do is Asheville is nestled in the mountains, and we wanted to make sure that we were taking advantage of our river. And so we're improving our river arts district. And we wanted play holes. We heard about people putting in on the river upstream and downstream, but not in our city limits. So we're redesigning the road to make it easier and bikeable. We adopted a complete streets policy to make sure that the improvements that we do to the roadway will have a bike lane and make sure it's easier to get through our community. But we also have put in play holes so people can actually canoe and to kayak actually in the city limits. One of the things we also did was we wanted to make sure that we got rid of the islands that were deserts when it comes to fresh food. And so what we did was we made sure that we changed our ordinance. So every church and every school can now have a tailgate market and not have to come to City Hall. And so that in itself really transformed our community, because now we have communities who have gardens who are coming together to put a tailgate market in place, and it's happening right there in our community so that we don't have any barriers coming from City Hall to access fresh fruits and vegetables. Another thing from the city government, in 1997, we found that for our city, 80% of our health care costs was only coming from 20% of our employees. So when we put in a wellness plan, we made sure that we addressed the major issues and the major barriers that were causing our employees to have the high health care costs. We're proud to say that it's been replicated in various cities across this country, but this year we added smoking cessation and depression, because we found out those who had depression were missing just as many days as those who had diabetes or high cholesterol. And we want to get our employees help. And so we're really proud of that and seeing the results of what happens when you really address mental illness in a holistic manner.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bellamy. Mayor Fisher, I'd like to hear a little bit about your local food program as well as some of your other initiatives.
Okay, fantastic. Well, as many of you all know, Louisville has been named the International City of Compassion. And we also, Zagat named the 8 foodiest cities in the world, and Louisville was the only city in North America. And then GQ magazine named us the manliest city in the world, by the way. So we're a city of compassionate men that eat really well. And so this whole food and beverage sector is really important to us as well. 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky. The other 5% is counterfeit. So we have this culture of food and beverage. So how do you make it healthy? I'm a business guy that just happens to be mayor, so I said, how much demand is there for local food? And so we consume about $3 billion a year of food in Louisville. Our population is 750,000. 20% of that, or $600 million, is a demand for local food, which was really helpful for us then to work with the farmers in the surrounding area around Louisville and Kentucky and Indiana. And we're actually driving that down by commodity and then hooking them up with industrial and educational large volume users so we can really build a healthy, sustainable local food economy as well. So that's been a great step in terms of meeting or having supply and demand meet each other. Our restaurants, as I said, are really well known all across the world. So people will come to Louisville just to dine and imbibe beverages and work out at the same time. Of course, they like the spa experiences. So it's a big part of our overall GDP for the city. But then we want to drive it down to the lowest level possible in the city in terms of individual action. So we have a group called the Louisville Youth Advocates that I talked about in the summer at the Conference of Mayors. This is a group of young leaders from a disadvantaged part of the community that when they were surveying what the needs were for their community the most, the message that came back was good local fruits and vegetables. So we partnered with the YMCA
to develop these healthy in a hurry corner food stores where people could walk to the corner and get fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, these young folks, not only did they identify the need, and this was a $150,000 grant we received from the Beverage Association and the Conference of Mayors, but then they said, okay, we're going to grow the food, and then we're going to sell it to these corner markets. So not only did they learn about how to be community advocates, but also they learned how to grow food, and they learned how to start a business, be entrepreneurs by selling it to the healthy in a hurry corner stores as well. So it's really, we start at the top with what's the big demand, and then drive it down to individual action on a corner store and developing entrepreneurs at the same time.
Thank you, Mayor Fisher. What I'm hearing from all four of you is that you're incorporating programs. They're not necessarily directly targeted at obesity. They're more improvements in all aspects of life. For instance, Mayor Bellamy talking about bringing in depression screening into your wellness program. How important is it to have it be part of kind of an overarching policy as opposed to something that's specifically targeted at obesity or even at wellness?
No one identifies himself as obese. We did a study, our community health assessment said that 66% of the people in Buncombe County are either overweight or obese. And then when we look in the audience and we say 66 people stand up out of 100, no one would stand up. And so no one identifies themselves usually as being that label, so why use it? What we have to deal with are the symptoms, and what we do is provide solutions. And if we spend so much time putting a label that's negative, most people don't want to own something that's negative. If they do, they shed it quickly. But that was a joke. Because nobody wants to be associated with something negative. And so if you turn it around to provide opportunities, and when we start providing opportunities in Asheville for people to participate in tailgate markets, they were not doing it because they were in a fresh food island, a desert. They were doing it because they wanted access to fresh food. They were wanting to be associated with something positive, and it's sustainable in that way. If we tell somebody that you need to spend 30 minutes a day walking, but if we say you have 23 and a half hours to do whatever you want, use the next 30 minutes for your health and wellness, and that includes walking. It's just different. There's a film out, you can look it on YouTube, but it talks about 23 and a half hours a day. And it talks about how you can spend that doing whatever you want. Just take 30 minutes to go for a walk. And when the emphasis is on, 23 and a half hours a day, you can do whatever you want. Only 30 minutes, most people can do that. And so it's all about how we look at these issues and stop putting a negative brand on them. And it's not like we are not acknowledging the truth. It's just that we want it to be sustainable, and we want people to actually carry through on what they've committed to doing. One of the things I want to really quickly say is we just announced a campaign in Asheville, 5-2-1, almost none, and our YMCA has helped leading this. Five vegetables and fruits a day, 2 hours or less of screen time, 1 hour of exercise, and almost none carbohydrates or sugary drinks, and it's working because people are like, okay, I can eat 5 vegetables. And we kind of get them to identify, well, what are you going to eat for breakfast? How's that going to happen for lunch? What are you going to do? And it makes it user-friendly. It's easy to remember, 5-2-1, almost none. It works, as opposed to you're obese and you need to eat more fruits and vegetables.
Mayor Rawlings-Blake, can you tell us a little bit about how you've managed to reach pregnant women? This is a group that's not necessarily looking for help from the mayor.
So in 2012, we launched Be More for Healthy Babies. It's our program, our initiative focused on low-income women and making sure that they have babies at a healthy birth weight and they understand the importance of sleep safety and all those things. And one thing we noticed is that women know the link between your weight and a healthy pregnancy. I know firsthand, I have one daughter, she's 9 years old, so if you ask why I don't have two, this is why. When I found that I was pregnant, I was almost 220 pounds. That meant I had a high-risk pregnancy. That meant that I was at the doctor's office every other week getting a sonogram, making sure that I didn't gain too much weight. It was hard for me to breathe. It wasn't good, and I had access to health care. Think about women that don't have that access, that don't have all of the extra to make sure that they can be healthy. It's those women that this program focuses on. So with the help of our friends at Weight Watchers, we have group sessions. You can bring a friend. You learn about healthy nutrition, and we've seen results. These women are working together. They are losing weight, and they are at the same time learning the skills that they need to make sure that not only do they have a healthy pregnancy, but they know what to do once that baby is born. So this is something that's very personal to me, and I'm just glad we have a good partner that had a program already in place that we could use to help these women. Thank you.
Mayor Cornett, I'd like to ask you, you've managed to change at least some of the streets in Oklahoma City. Are you seeing people out on the sidewalks, and does the weather affect that? That's something that people often complain about.
Yeah, I think with sidewalks and jogging and biking paths, if you build it, they will come. The bike sales in the community are going up. New bike shops are opening up all over the city, and people are out walking and exercising in numbers that we had not seen before. You can't expect people to get out and walk if you don't have sidewalks, if they don't have places to walk to. But we had zoned our cities, we had built our cities as just a series of drive-in restaurants, and it was a really tough city to live a healthy life. And it's not going to be easy to change, but we've at least started in that direction.
And I'd like to ask at least one of the mayors from a southern city how barbecue fits into all this.
Well, seeing how the president loves to come to 12 Bones in Asheville, North Carolina, you too could come. It's one of those things that we respect people's ability to choose, but we also educate them on their choices. And so it's not just about putting the calories there, it's about them knowing, well, what's in it, or what are the opportunities to prepare food where you won't have so many calories added. And I think that's the difference in that in Asheville, we're now going up against several cities for the tastiest city. And what we're doing is providing opportunities, because we have a lot of independently owned restaurants, for them to put their menus online and see what the ingredients are, because gluten is a big issue now, and so people can be able to choose. We want something that's gluten-free. We want it prepared that's healthy. And so when you come to Asheville, you have an opportunity to see barbecue prepared that's really healthy in choice.
We have a menu label ordinance as well, which I think is important. But I also think big displays of the public's commitment to health are important. You talked about our Zumba deal. All of our health programs exist under an umbrella we call the Mayor's Healthy Hometown. And twice a year, on Memorial Day and Labor Day, we have a huge event on our great lawn right on the Ohio River. 12 to 15,000 people show up, and they're either hiking, biking, paddling, yoga, Tai Chi, or Zumba. And so whatever it is that makes you active, we keep adding it every year. So there'll be a big picture on the front page of the newspaper the next day with 200 people doing Tai Chi, or 300 people doing yoga all at one time on the Great Lawn, or 10,000 people going down Main Street on a bike. And it really motivates people to come out, because as I talk to people every year, they say, this forced me to come on out and get active. It changed my life. So don't underestimate these big symbolic activities when you pull your whole city together to get fit.
Mayor Fisher, is there a picture somewhere of you doing Zumba or Tai Chi?
Absolutely. I'm a man for all seasons.
One of the big constraints that all of you have is money. I've been asked to point to these cards on your table. There are grants available. Shall I tell them a bit more? Or why don't I'll leave this to David to wrap up at the end. He can talk a little bit about these grants that are available. But is there anything that the four of you can share that you've done that's not very costly, or have you found interesting ways to fund some of your initiatives?
I'll just jump in. We offer about a dozen mini grants, about $2,000 to $4,000 a year to community groups that are active in fitness. It could be helping an apple orchard in our inner city, aquatics, aerobics for seniors. So people come up with good ideas. We just give them a little seed money and let them run with it. Not a lot of money, but it's got a lot of symbolic value behind it.
We didn't use any money in our program. I had a private sector friend who donated the assets for the website that we created, and then I used free and earned media to drive attention and to lead people to the website. So it was a good example of what you can do at the bully pulpit. because there was never a vote on the city council to put the city on a diet. It was just me standing in front of the elephants, and then it's interesting to see the power of a movement like that when there's a voice and so many people anxious to hear it, but didn't know really what conversation could start.
And there wasn't any political price to pay for having done that.
There was much more positive, I think. There's a few people that didn't like. Yeah, I think a lot of people went to the water cooler the next day and said, "Did you hear what the crazy mayor did?" I'm sure that happened. But at the end of the day, they were talking about obesity, and that was the whole point, was to get a conversation going, because we were not talking about it. It was a subject that just didn't seem to be anything that we wanted to discuss publicly. And I think bringing the conversation out front allowed people to talk about it in their homes or at their church or at their business or over the backyard fence. And that conversation is very, very powerful if you can get it going.
And since we're sitting here in Washington, D.C., what help do you all need from the federal government to do your jobs here better? Or can you do it without?
Well, we all, I think, have infrastructure needs, and a lot of what we're talking about is improved and changing our infrastructure. And to a certain extent, they are becoming more aware that some of our infrastructure needs aren't all about cars. And so those dollars are very valued in city halls. When we can use federal dollars for stuff like bike paths and jogging trails, we really value those tremendously. So any additional dollars that Washington can find for us would be greatly appreciated.
Now, I talked earlier about the local food economy and trying to match supply and demand. That's an area where the federal government can help, but I mean, it was kind of telling that we were all silent when you asked about help from the federal government. So
Probably because we all know that none is forthcoming. We're about out of time. I'd like to thank Mayor Bellamy, Mayor Fisher, Mayor Rawlings Blake, Mayor Cornett for sharing some of their ideas. We've heard all sorts of suggestions, from going out to the zoo and appearing in front of the elephants to make the point that Americans are too fat, to opening up swimming holes in your downtown for kids to splash in, and walking school buses, to initiatives to educate pregnant women about how they can keep themselves healthy, and of course keeping bourbon and gourmet food on the menu as well as a health initiative. I also think all four mayors are a perfect example of people who have taken the message home first to themselves and aren't just saying do as I say, not as I do. They're walking the walk as well, and I think they can be congratulated for that. Again, thank you so much for your time, all four of you. And again, I'm going to hold this up, and I'm going to hand it back over to David so that he can talk about this. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your attention.
Well, I guess never underestimate the power of an elephant is one thing I'm taking away from this. While you may not be able to always count on the federal government to provide funding and assistance, you can count on us to do our bit. And with that in mind, I'm happy to announce the Healthy Communities Grant Program, where we will be providing $1 million of in-kind Weight Watcher services for low-income populations spread across a small city, a medium-sized city, and a large city. There's an application process. We're looking forward to it. It's similar to programs we've run in other municipalities and other partnerships and other pilot programs. There's a great partnership opportunity to be built here, and I'm looking forward to seeing this grant program go on. Thank you.
David and all of our panelists, thank you so very much. Certainly to the mayors who presented, and Ms. Fox, thank you for your moderation. And with that, I'm not done.
No, I just want to mention about the thing tonight. We look forward to seeing all of you across the street at 9:30 tonight. This is a late night celebration honoring Michael A. Nutter. So seriously, We're having a party at 9:30 across the street, so have nice dinners, and we'll see you at the St. Regis Hotel, okay?
And now, our plenary session is adjourned. See you at some of the meetings, and as Tom said, certainly hope to see you across the street later on tonight. Thank you.